What could possibly link a fatal explosion, a warehouse filled with vape pens and nitrous oxide canisters, and a one-way ticket to Hong Kong? This isn't a riddle or a setup for a crime novel, but the real-life mystery that unfolded in Michigan in March of 2024. An explosion rocked a warehouse, resulting in the tragic death of a 19-year-old bystander. Amidst the debris and chaos, investigators found a trail leading to Noor Kestow, the owner of the warehouse. Kestow was later arrested at an airport, clutching a one-way ticket to Hong Kong. A whirlwind of questions and speculation ensued, with the most unsettling one being, was Kestow attempting to flee the country and evade responsibility for the tragedy? Let's dive into the heart of this chilling incident. On March 4, 2024, a seemingly ordinary day turned into a nightmare in Clinton Township, just outside Detroit. An unexpected explosion erupted from a warehouse owned by Noor Kestow, shaking the community to its core. The warehouse, a distributor for vape pens and smoke shop items, was packed to the brim with illegally stored butane and nitrous oxide canisters. The blast was so powerful that debris spewed up to a mile away, and the fire it sparked took more than a day to extinguish. The explosion's immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos and destruction. Amidst the rubble and the smoke, a tragedy unfolded. Turner Lee Salter, a 19-year-old, was standing a quarter-mile away from the blast. A flying canister from the explosion hit him, ending his life tragically. It was a calamity that no one in the vicinity was prepared for, a danger that no one could have foreseen. In the days following the explosion, the local fire department worked tirelessly to control the sporadic explosions, pop-up fires, and smoke that continued to emanate from the warehouse. It was a daunting task that took them more than a week to complete. The warehouse, once a hub of business, now lay in ruins, a grim reminder of the disaster that had taken place. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, a question loomed large. What caused the explosion? Investigators from the ATF took charge of the case, sifting through the debris and the evidence. Their initial findings were inconclusive. The cause of the fire that led to the explosion remained a mystery. The local fire chief stated, "We cannot exclude human involvement in this fire at this time." The mystery deepened as investigators could not immediately determine the cause of the fire. With debris scattered up to a mile away, the investigation was far from straightforward. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, or ATF, took the lead on the case. The warehouse that had exploded was filled with vape pens, smoke shop items, and illegally stored butane and nitrous oxide canisters. The cause of the fire that led to the explosion was still a mystery. It took firefighters more than 24 hours to extinguish the flames, and the aftermath was a scene of utter devastation. One of the biggest challenges the investigators faced was the sheer size of the explosion area. Debris was scattered far and wide, complicating the task of piecing together what exactly had happened. The local fire chief, Tim Duncan, noted the intensity of the fire had essentially damaged a lot of what they would normally look to in order to determine the cause of the incident. As the investigation continued, one thing became clear: they could not rule out human involvement. This wasn't just a tragic accident, there was a possibility of foul play. The owner of the warehouse, Noor Kestow, had been cooperative during the early stages of the investigation. But as the pieces began to fall into place, officials started to question his role in the incident. In the midst of the investigation, a shock came. On April 20th, law enforcement discovered that Kestow's passport had been scanned. It seemed he was planning to leave the country on a one-way ticket to Hong Kong. This was a game changer. Detectives met with prosecutors, and a warrant for his arrest was quickly authorized. As the days passed, a sinister twist was about to unfold. While the investigation was ongoing, the owner of the warehouse, Noor Kestow, had plans of his own. As the smoke was still clearing from the devastating explosion, Kestow was making his way to the John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. His destination? Hong Kong. His ticket? One way. The authorities back in Michigan were alerted to his flight plan. It wasn't an escape to a vacation spot or a business trip that caught their attention. It was the one-way nature of his ticket that raised eyebrows. Did Kestow have plans to leave the country for good, leaving behind a wife and a child? Or was there another reason for his sudden departure? Macomb County prosecutor Peter Lucido was left pondering these questions. He stated, "We don't know what his ultimate goal was." And while Kestow's intentions remained unclear, the authorities were swift in their response. Detectives met with prosecutors and promptly authorized a warrant for Kestow's arrest. In a dramatic turn of events, Kestu was apprehended at JFK Airport before he could board his flight. His plans of leaving the country were thwarted and he was escorted back to Michigan by the police. Back home, Kestu found himself facing serious charges. He was arraigned, pleaded not guilty, and was released on a $500,000 cash bond. The conditions of his release were stringent. He was to be on a tether, surrender his passport, abstain from possessing any weapons, and he was not permitted to leave the state. Kestu's arrest shed a new light on the case, leading to more questions than answers. Upon his return to Michigan, Kestu was faced with grave allegations. He was charged with 1 count of involuntary manslaughter, a serious crime that carries significant weight in the court of law. This charge was not a result of a direct action, but rather the unfortunate and fatal consequence of the warehouse explosion. Kestu, maintaining his innocence, pleaded not guilty during his arraignment hearing. If convicted, the repercussions could be severe. Involuntary manslaughter in Michigan holds a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison. This, in combination with the loss of his business, would be a life-altering outcome for Kestu. The court also imposed stringent conditions on his release, including a $500,000 cash bond, surrendering his passport, and restrictions on his movement within the state. But the legal process is a lengthy one, and the wheels of justice turn slowly. With the investigation still ongoing, the final verdict lies in the future. For now, Kestu is left to grapple with the charges and the potential consequences. Despite the charges, the puzzle was far from complete. In the wake of the explosion, the community and the environment bore the brunt. The aftermath was not just a charred warehouse or a grieving community, but a landscape littered with potential hazards that needed urgent attention. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, quickly stepped in to initiate cleanup efforts. The warehouse, once a distributor for vape pens and smoke shop items, was now a field of over 3,100 canisters of nitrous oxide. Each one of these canisters posed an ongoing risk, not only as potential projectiles if they exploded, but also as a threat to the environment. The EPA faced the mammoth task of securing these canisters, each one needing to be placed in specially designed containers with strict transportation requirements. As the cleanup carried on, the impact on the community became increasingly apparent. Streets once filled with the everyday hustle and bustle of life were now eerily quiet, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The community was left grappling with the loss of a young life and the fear of what could have been. The local fire department, having spent over a week monitoring and extinguishing sporadic explosions and pop-up fires, became a constant presence. Their efforts, however, were not just focused on ensuring the safety of the community. They also played a crucial role in preserving the site for the ongoing investigation, a task made all the more challenging by the intense fire that had ravaged the warehouse. But in the face of adversity, the community rallied. They offered support to one another, whether it was a shoulder to lean on or a helping hand in the cleanup efforts. They sought not just to rebuild their community, but also to seek answers and justice for the loss they had suffered. As the cleanup continues, the community seeks answers and justice. Despite the progress in the case, many questions linger. The lingering smoke and debris from the explosion have cleared, but the cloud of mystery surrounding this tragedy remains thick. The cause of the explosion, one of the most pressing questions, is yet to be determined. While illegally stored canisters of butane and nitrous oxide were found at the scene, the exact trigger is still unknown. Was it a tragic accident, or is there more to the story? The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, leading the investigation, has not ruled out human involvement, leaving us to wonder if this disaster was preventable. Then there's the matter of Kestu's intentions. His abrupt attempt to leave the country raises eyebrows. With a one-way ticket to Hong Kong in hand and his family left behind, we must ask, was he fleeing from the imminent charges, or was there another reason for his sudden departure? His actions have undoubtedly cast a shadow of suspicion, adding another layer of complexity to this already intricate case. And what of the future? What awaits Kestu as he faces a charge of involuntary manslaughter? If convicted, he could spend up to 15 years in prison. But will that bring closure to the community, or to the grieving family of the 19-year-old victim, Turner Lee Salter? As we delve deeper into this case, we are left grappling with these unanswered questions. They hang in the air much like the smoke that once billowed from the warehouse. And while we await these answers, one thing is certain: the tragic loss of a young life in this incident. In a case filled with mystery and tragedy, we are left with a chilling reminder. The explosion of the warehouse in Clinton Township, Michigan not only resulted in the tragic death of 19-year-old Turner Lee Salter, but it also exposed a web of illegal activity and potential evasion of justice. The warehouse, owned by Noor Kestu, was a distributor for vape pens and smoke shop items and was found to be filled with illegally stored butane and nitrous oxide canisters. The explosion, the cause of which still remains under investigation, spewed debris up to a mile away and took more than 24 hours to extinguish. Noor Kestu's attempt to leave the country on a one-way ticket to Hong Kong further deepens the air of mystery around this case. His arrest at John F. Kennedy Airport and the subsequent charges of involuntary manslaughter have drawn the world's attention to this small Michigan township. If convicted, Kestu faces up to 15 years in prison, a sentence that echoes the severity of the events that unfolded. But amidst the investigation, the charges, and the potential repercussions, we must not forget the human element of this story. Turner Lee Salter, a young life cut short by this tragic event. A reminder of the real cost of such incidents beyond the legal and financial ramifications. This case serves as a stark reminder of the potential dangers that lurk within our communities, often hidden in plain sight. It underlines the importance of stringent checks and balances and the enforcement of safety regulations. It shines a light on the responsibility of business owners to ensure the safety of their operations, not just for their employees but for the wider community. This story is far from over. The investigation continues, with potential human involvement in the fire still not ruled out. As we watch the events unfold, we are reminded of the importance of justice, not just for the accused but for the victims and their families. As we continue to follow this case, we remember Turner Lee Salter and hope for justice in his name.